Hey there, survivor. If you can hear this, it means you're still alive. I'm in the airport control tower on day 40, after the outbreak, with 2.8 liters of water left, 4 packets of salted crackers, 1 bruised apple that's starting to go soft on one side, and 3 protein bars I've been breaking into halves to make myself feel less close to empty. The tower cab sits high enough that the wind never really stops. Even with the windows sealed, I hear it moving around the glass and over the roof panels in a low, steady rush that sounds like surf if I let myself be tired enough to pretend. Below me, the runways lie black and wide and useless. Long rivers of cracked lights stretching into the dark. A few centerline lights still flicker on one taxiway, not because anyone is guiding aircraft anymore, but because some part of the field electrical loop still wakes up when the backup system catches and coughs power through the bones of the place. It happens irregularly. 3 seconds of pale blue-green light, 10 seconds of darkness, then a string of lights farther out, like a hand trying to remember how to move. From up here I see everything, and understand almost none of it. There are aircraft sitting where they were left. One heavy jet stands beyond Terminal B, with its nose pointed toward a runway it never reaches, cabin doors shut, windows black. 2 regional aircraft rest farther west, near the maintenance apron. One of them has an emergency slide hanging limp and dirty from the forward door, yellow fabric snapping in the wind when the gusts get under it. Beyond them, the terminals stay silent. All that glass and steel, all that polished floor and dead electronics. Even now, 40 days into this, they look less ruined than abandoned, less destroyed than interrupted. That may be the worst part. It still resembles a place people expect to return to. On the tarmac, the infected wander where there's room to wander. Some drift in slow circles near baggage carts. Some stand still for so long, I mistake them for discarded coats or twisted traffic cones, until one of them tilts its head or takes 2 uneven steps. They move without any visible plan, but they collect where sound collects. On windy nights, they gather near loose sheet metal. During storms, they press under awnings and jet bridges. When one starts hitting glass with its hands, the others eventually follow. Not fast, not like in films, just drawn by contact and repetition, the way birds circle a flashing light. I'm watching 6 of them now near the service road east of the terminal. There were 9 before sunset. 2 drift off towards cargo. 1 disappears behind a fuel truck. Counting them helps. Counting anything helps. The food and water are the real problem. They always are. Fear comes and goes in waves, but thirst is linear. It doesn't negotiate. It doesn't care that I've managed 40 days in a place built for traffic control instead of shelter. I've already stripped the upper floors of everything useful. The break room yields coffee powder, powdered creamer, artificial sweetener, and a single sealed tin of shortbread 3 weeks ago. The vending machines downstairs give me dust, a few peanuts, and 1 melted block of chocolate that tastes like candles and cardboard. The emergency cabinets along the stairwell are mostly empty because I got to them early and because somebody else got to some of them before me. That somebody is what keeps scratching at the back of my mind. I'm not the first person to hide in this tower. I know that now. I know it from the journal, the recording, the locked maintenance room, and the way certain supplies are missing in patterns that only make sense if another careful person moves through these floors before I do. Not a panicked crowd. Not looters. 1 or 2 people at most. Disciplined. Quiet. Familiar enough with the building to know which doors matter. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That happens when I'm hungry. I work as a communications technician before all this starts. Not management, not security, not police. I'm the person people barely notice unless a radio channel dies, a backup unit fails a self-test, a weather feed starts lagging, or a controller points at a rack and says the green light is supposed to be on. I spend most of my time around wiring, consoles, antenna paths, maintenance logs, and the kind of equipment that only gets appreciated when it stops doing its job. That matters now in ways it never did before. I know where the patch panels are. I know which battery rooms overheat first. I know how long an unmaintained UPS can be coaxed into giving me 1 more cycle if I rotate the load and shut down everything non-essential. I know how to listen to static and separate atmospheric noise from a real signal. None of that makes me brave. It just keeps me alive a little longer than I should be. The tower itself helps. The cab at the top gives me visibility. The floors below give me layers. Glass above, concrete below, locked doors between. The elevator dies on day 2, so the only reliable access is the stairwell. I chain the lower doors. I wedge fire extinguishers under handles. I mark each landing with a strip of reflective tape so I can move in low light without using a torch. I sleep in the equipment room 1 floor below the cab, because it has no windows and the concrete walls keep the wind noise down. I drag 2 office chairs together and pad them with folded jackets. My back hurts constantly. My left knee swells whenever I use the stairs too fast. I cut that knee on broken glass in Terminal C on day 11, and it never quite goes back to normal. Tonight the air smells of rain before the rain actually comes. I know that smell from roof work and from long field days repairing approach lighting in bad weather. Wet dust, ozone, hot metal cooling too fast. Storms move across the airfield in long dark sheets, flattening what little visibility I have and turning the windows into mirrors. When lightning hits somewhere beyond the cargo hangars, the whole airport flashes white for less than a second. In that light, the parked planes look skeletal. The service vehicles look arranged on purpose. The infected look like ordinary people caught mid-step. Then the dark returns and puts them back where they belong. I decide, for the 5th time today, that I need to leave the tower tomorrow. I don't say it out loud. Saying it makes it sound like a plan instead of a necessity, and plans deserve confidence I don't have. But the numbers are simple enough. If I ration hard, I have maybe 2 days of drinking water left. 3, if the weather cools and I stop climbing so much. Food matters less immediately. I can go longer without food than I want to think about, and I already know what my body feels like when it starts eating itself. Lightheaded when I stand, hands less steady when I'm tying knots, a slow burn in the stomach that eventually becomes emptiness instead of pain. Water is the real clock. I do 1 more sweep of the tower before full dark, not because I expect to find anything new, but because routine keeps bad thoughts from breeding. The stairwell door from the cab sticks in damp weather. I put my shoulder into it and ease it open slowly, careful not to let the latch click. The floor below holds the radar displays and communication racks, though most of them are dead now. Emergency lights along the baseboards glow weak amber from the battery strings I've been nursing. Dust lies on the console surfaces, except where I've been moving my hands. I pass the weather terminal, the supervisor station, and the storage cabinet where I keep sorted scavenged items. Batteries by type, lighters, sealing tape, lengths of wire, 2 clean coffee filters, a box cutter, medical tape, a half roll of black contractor bags, and a plastic folder of airport schematics that become more useful every day. I check the rooftop access hatch first. I only open it when the sky is dark or storming hard enough to cover movement, because the roof is exposed and the cab windows can reflect. The latch still holds. Good. Then I move to the break room. Stainless sink, empty fridge, 2 mugs, a spoon bent at the neck. The cupboard over the microwave gives me nothing but paper napkins and a packet of instant soup so old the inside has fused into a brick. I keep it anyway. Salt is still salt. The maintenance closet, near the west wall, still smells like machine oil and damp mop heads. I've taken the flashlight batteries, extension cords, chemical gloves, and a coil of nylon line from it weeks ago. Tonight I search deeper, kneeling to look behind stacked buckets and a collapsed caution sign. My knee protests immediately, sharp at first, then throbbing. Behind the buckets I find only dust, a dead radio earpiece, and 1 rusted cabinet key, tagged with a faded plastic oval. The label has worn blank. I turn it in my hand for a long time. There are 23 locked things in the tower complex that I know about. 9 offices, 4 cabinets, a first aid locker already pried open, several electrical spaces I don't need, 1 roof utility box, and the maintenance room on the lower operations floor that I still haven't gotten into. I pocket the key. When I say lower operations floor, I mean the level beneath the equipment deck, not the ground floor. The tower base has several rooms built into the broader structure where admin staff and technical personnel used to work. I haven't spent much time there after the first week because it's closer to ground level and because sound travels up the stairwell in ways I don't like, but that's where the locked room is. Door painted institutional grey, No window. Standard airport service lock. Scratches around the handle, which means someone tried it without success. On day 23, I'm the one who finds a journal in the office beside it, and that changes the shape of the whole place. I think about the journal now, as I descend. The office where I find it belongs to no one important. Training coordinator, maybe. Desk, filing cabinet, dead monitor, wall calendar still turned to the month everything ends. The journal sits in the bottom drawer, under procurement forms, and old parking vouchers, wrapped in a plastic duty-free bag, as if whoever puts it there wants one more layer between the words and the world. Brown cover, spiral bound, blue pen, tight handwriting that gets worse as it goes. I only read a few lines at first because I'm standing in a room with too many windows and not enough exits. Later, back upstairs, I read every page by flashlight. The entries begin on day 12 after the outbreak. The writer identifies herself only once, signing an equipment checklist with the name Marta. She says she's been sheltering in the tower with a man called Ellison from airport operations and another woman from security, whose name never appears. She counts supplies the same way I do. She notes which stairwell doors they seal, which radios still transmit, which terminal corridors are too loud because luggage alarms keep chirping from dead batteries. On day 17, she writes that the East Quarantine Zone is abandoned. On day 19, she writes, plane still on remote stand, no movement, no crew response. On day 23, she writes, Ellison says use tunnel if tower isn't safe. Keep maintenance room locked. Don't answer ground frequency after dark. Ground frequency after dark. The airport radios still work intermittently because the communications backbone here is redundant by design, not permanently, not reliably, but enough. Enough that I can scan frequencies, bounce between tower, ground, approach, emergency service channels, maintenance bands, and a few utility links that were never meant for voices at all. Most of what I hear is static, weather hiss, and occasional bursts of carrier signal with no speech attached. Once on day 14, I hear a woman crying for 15 seconds before the transmission cuts. Once on day 28, I hear someone say, very clearly, Gate 18 is not secure, followed by 10 seconds of feedback, and nothing after. On day 31, I hear 2 words on ground frequency, just after midnight. Still here, male voice, low, calm, then silence. I don't answer. I keep thinking about Marta's warning. I keep thinking about why she writes it that way, as if answering is the danger, not listening. At the lower operations floor, the hallway smells old and enclosed. Dust, paper, stale carpet, and underneath it a deeper sourness that comes and goes depending on the weather. Not rot, exactly. More like standing water in a forgotten drain. My flashlight beam slides over door signs, stripped desks, and the framed airport emergency flowchart hanging crooked near the copier alcove. I pause, listening. The building is never silent. Air shifts in ducts. Loose metal taps somewhere overhead. The storm presses against the tower skin, far below, maybe outside, maybe in the terminal service lane. Something metallic rolls a short distance and stops, but there's no human movement in the hall, no breathing that isn't mine. I cross to the locked maintenance room and try the rusted key. It doesn't fit. That's the kind of failure that can break a person if the day is bad enough. I stand with the useless key halfway into the lock and feel anger rise so fast it almost makes me careless. The door looks the same as it did yesterday. Same chipped paint at the lower corner, same scuff marks, same narrow seam. But now I have a key, and it's the wrong one, which is worse than no key at all, because hope burns energy. I press my forehead briefly against the cold metal and let the feeling pass. Then I step back and look properly. Someone has written a small number beside the doorframe in pencil. Not recent, not old enough to fade entirely either. 4B17. That's not an office designation. That's a maintenance inventory mark. I shine the light over the frame, down the hinges, across the threshold. At the lower hinge, there's fresh enough metal shine where paint has been scraped. The screws have been removed before and put back. I smile, which feels strange on my face. Back upstairs, I dig out the multi-bit driver from my tool cache, 2 spare batteries for the flashlight, and a folded rag to catch the screws if they drop. It takes me 15 minutes to work the hinge pins loose, without noise. Every few turns, I stop and listen. The stairwell stays quiet. The storm finally arrives and the rain begins drumming on the roof hard enough to cover small sounds. Perfect. When the top hinge frees, I support the door with my shoulder so it doesn't sag. The lower hinge fights more. My fingers cramp. Sweat runs down my back, even though the hall is cool. Finally, the last pin lifts, and I ease the door inward a few centimeters. A smell comes out first. Dry cardboard, diesel, plastic wrap, human occupation, faint but distinct, like opening a closed caravan after winter. I widen the gap and step inside. The room is windowless, about 3 meters by 4, lit only by my flashlight. Metal shelving lines 2 walls. The supplies are not abundant, but they are real, and for a second my body reacts before my mind does. Relief hits like dizziness. There are 6 bottles of water in shrink wrap, a carton of high-calorie emergency ration bars, 4 road flares, 2 compact blankets, a first aid kit, a hand-cranked lantern, nitrile gloves, a roll of heavy cord, a folded high-visibility rain poncho, and a sealed toolbox stamped airside utilities. On the floor sits a black portable radio recorder, plugged into nothing, next to a bundle of charging cables and a dead battery block. I close the door behind me and just stand there with my hand against it. Whoever leaves this room ready like this expects someone to come back. That thought steadies me more than the water does. I force myself into procedure. Inventory first, emotion later. I check dates, seals, damage, weight. The water is intact. The ration bars are still usable. The first aid kit has been opened once, but mostly repacked. The toolbox contains what I hoped for and more. Adjustable wrench, insulated cutters, cable ties, a pry bar, spare fuses, a headlamp, and a laminated fold-out of utility access routes beneath the airport complex. That's the moment I find the tunnel. It isn't a secret in the mythical sense. It exists on the drawing exactly where it should, marked in thin blue line under the service corridors and central plant feeds. Utility tunnel, restricted access, runs beneath part of Terminal B, the operations annex, baggage systems, and out toward a maintenance substation beyond the tower service yard. There are branches I don't fully understand, and one segment under the old quarantine holding area that has been circled in red marker. Beside it, someone has written, "Door failsafe manual only." I sit on the floor with the schematic spread over my knees and listen to rain hammer the tower while my heartbeat slows. There's more. Taped to the back of the door is a photocopied page from a field log. Not the original, just a single page, timestamp column, initials, short notes. The final entry reads, "Remote stand 6, meal transport delayed, medical hold below, await escort." No date, no signature I recognize. Under that, in pen, Marta or someone else writes, "They were still moving when power dropped." I don't know what they means. Patients, infected, baggage handlers, anybody. But I know enough to understand why a maintenance room gets locked and stocked. The portable recorder turns on after I spend 20 minutes rigging one of my spare battery packs to its input. There is one saved file. The speaker crackles, and then a man's voice fills the room, tired and clipped, background noise hissing behind him. If anyone's hearing this from tower level, listen first. Don't transmit. Don't use the main stair after dark. They're coming in from the terminal connectors and from below, not just outside. We sealed the sub-level service door, but the latch won't hold if they pile on it. Marta's taking supplies up. If Ellison doesn't come back from the annex, assume he's gone. Don't go to the quarantine corridor unless you have breathing protection. There's blood in the drains and something wrong with the air handling. If the lights in B concourse come on by themselves, somebody's in the system. Might be survivors, might be the backup cycling. Don't trust voices on ground. They were answering us back with our own call signs. The recording ends there with a click. I replay it twice. The voice is adult male, maybe late 40s, controlled under pressure. Airport operations fits. Ellison, maybe, or someone warning about him. Answering us back with our own call signs could mean confusion, panic, crossed channels, people using old identifiers. Nothing more. Stress makes simple things sound sinister. I keep telling myself that. Stress and radio propagation and half-functioning equipment can turn nonsense into patterns if you're hungry enough. Still, I take the recorder. By the time I haul the first load of supplies upstairs, the rain is coming down in hard silver sheets across the windows. The airfield nearly disappears beyond the nearest taxiway. Water streams from the tower roof drains and rattles down the exterior conduit. This is good news wrapped in bad weather. I've been collecting rainwater since day 12 by taking plastic storage bins and cut-open service jugs up to the roof when storms are heavy enough to cover me. It isn't elegant, but it works. The roof slopes toward a drain lip near the west side, and if I wedge a broken panel under the flow, I can guide runoff into containers faster than trying to catch it from open sky. Then I filter it through coffee filters and clean cloth, dose a little purification from the emergency kit if I have it, or boil it downstairs on a maintenance heater when I can spare the fuel. The first time I do it, my hands shake so badly I spill half a liter. By day 2-3, I have a system. 2 bins, 1 jug, 15 minutes per cycle, no light, no standing fully upright above the parapet. Tonight, I climb with the containers because it would be stupid not to. The storm is loud enough to hide me. I leave the flashlight off and let lightning give me my bearings. Up on the roof, the wind hits so hard it almost turns me sideways. Rain needles my face. The metal surface is slick under my boots. Every distant shape on the airfield smears into grey. I crouch low, set the bins under the improvised runoff channel, and hold them steady while cold water drums into plastic. From the roof, the airport feels endless in a way the tower cab never quite captures. The terminals spread like dark ships. The apron lights stay mostly dead. A few sodium lamps, far out near cargo glow, dim orange through the rain. And there, near the eastern edge of Terminal B, I see something I first take for reflected lightning. A light blinks twice. Not runway lighting. Too warm. Too low. Indoor light through glass, maybe. Or a flashlight covered and uncovered quickly. I go still. 30 seconds pass. Rain. Wind. My breath loud in my hood. Then I see it again. One brief pulse. Then darkness. Human threat possibility. That's the clinical phrase my mind uses. Because that is how tired people think when fear gets too familiar. Not rescue. Not company. Threat. Another group of survivors nearby changes everything. They might be disciplined and cautious. They might have seen my roof movement. They might already know the tower is occupied. If there's more than one of them, and they want height, water, radios, or shelter, then everything I have becomes temporary. I bring the water in and say nothing to the empty room. That night I don't sleep much. I sit beside the communication console with headphones on, scanning. Weather frequency. Dead. Maintenance repeater. Carrier hiss. Ground west. Static. Ground east. A burst of voice too distorted to understand. Emergency services. Nothing. Tower backup. My own breath in the headset and a faint hum from the power inverter. Around 2:10, when the storm begins to move off and the windows stop shaking as hard, I hear 2 sharp cracks from far across the field. Gunshots. Not close. Maybe cargo side. Maybe beyond the perimeter road. The sound reaches the tower, thin and delayed, but there is no mistaking it. 2 shots. A pause. Then one more. The infected on the tarmac react slowly. I see movement gathering near the service roads, heads turning toward the source. A line of figures drifts west. People are out there. I write the time in my notebook and force myself not to keep staring into darkness for shapes that may not be real. Morning comes grey and damp. The storm leaves puddles all over the roof and a smell of wet concrete in the stairwell. My collected water totals 5.6 liters after filtering loss. With the cash from the maintenance room, I'm no longer at immediate collapse, but food remains thin, and the existence of a tunnel changes what possible means. If the utility tunnel is passable, it offers a covered route through parts of the airport I've avoided. It may lead to storage, maintenance depots, vending warehouses, crew kitchens, bottled water in service carts, medical kits, maybe even the operations annex server room, where more records survive. It may also lead to infected, trapped in the dark with no daylight to slow them, bad air, flooded sections, or other survivors who don't want to share. I spend the morning preparing instead of deciding, because preparation is easier. I clean the cut on my knee again. The skin around it is still pink, but not spreading. Good. I rewrap my left hand, where a cable burn split the knuckle 2 days ago. I sort what I can carry without making noise. 1 liter of water, ration bar, flashlight with red filter taped over most of the lens, headlamp as backup, pry bar, multi-tool, spare batteries, short-handled wrench, recorder, 1 flare, notepad, and the tunnel schematic folded into a zip bag. I wear my lightest work jacket because heavy fabric catches on things, and I tape the loose zipper pull so it won't tick against metal. Over that, I pull the rain poncho rolled tight because underground wet is different from outdoor wet. Colder, more dangerous. Before I leave, I spend an hour with the radios. This part matters. It saves me more than once. Airport systems are built around routine communication, and even in collapse, routine leaves traces. I set the portable unit to sweep across the known working bands at slow intervals, while the main console monitors the strongest emergency channel. Most of it is static, but static has character. Some is broad weather wash, some narrow electronic hiss, some intermittent burst from failing components. Around midday, a voice breaks through on a maintenance frequency I usually ignore because it's mostly dead air. Repeat, if anyone is using the utility route, under B, stay clear of red doors. Stay clear of red doors. They chained one side, not both. Then silence. The message is either a warning, a trap, or an old loop triggering from some damaged recorder. I don't know which. The voice is male and younger than the one on the saved recording. Breathless, not panicked exactly. Urgent. It could be weeks old. It could be 5 minutes old. That's what radios do to time. They flatten it. I should stay in the tower. I know that. High ground. Visibility. Locked doors. But survival is arithmetic, and arithmetic eventually pushes you through fear if you hate dying slowly enough. I leave on day 40, at 13:20, during the bright part of the afternoon, because the infected outside tend to drift wider when the tarmac heats, and because the tunnel entrance I plan to use lies indoors at tower base level, not out on the open field. I secure the upper floors behind me the way I always do, chain at stairwell landing, wedge on fire door, noise trap with empty cans tied to cord at the final turn below the equipment room. I stand for a moment in the stairwell and listen to my own breathing echo upward. Then I go down. The lower levels smell different in daylight, not fresher, just more honest. Damp paper, electrical dust, old coffee, somewhere deep in the concrete mold. I move through the operations hall, past the office where Marta's journal waits in my stash bag, past the empty training room, down 1 more level to the service corridor that circles the tower base. The corridor has no windows, just painted cinder block and fluorescent housings, long since dead. My boots sound too loud on the floor. I hate that more than anything. In open spaces, noise disperses. In corridors, it belongs to you. At the far end is the service door marked Utilities Access, Authorized Personnel Only. I've noticed it before and ignored it because I had no reason to believe it open to anything but locked plant rooms and dead pipes. Now I match it to the schematic and feel a small cold movement in my stomach. This is it. The handle turns. The door opens into a concrete stair dropping below ground. Air rises from below with a temperature that doesn't match the day outside. Cool, wet, stale, carrying the mineral smell of enclosed infrastructure. Rust, old water, dust baked and re-wet, cable insulation. There's another smell under it, weaker but present, organic, not fresh, not strong enough to locate, just enough to tell me the tunnel is not empty of history. I stand at the top step longer than I should. There is no elegant way to move into darkness where other people have been, and possibly other things still are. There is only controlled compromise. I clip the radio to my belt, lower the flashlight to shin height to keep the beam off my face, and go down. The stairs descend 2 flights to a steel security grate hanging ajar on twisted hinges. Someone forces it open before me. The padlock lies on the floor in 2 pieces rusted around the cut. Beyond the grate, the tunnel begins. It is larger than I expect. Not a crawl space, not even a tight service chase. A proper maintenance tunnel, roughly 2 meters wide, with cable trays running overhead, insulated pipes along the wall, occasional valve stations, and drainage channels cut into the concrete floor. In some places, I can stand fully upright without touching the ceiling. In others, ducting drops low enough that I have to duck. My light catches numbered markings at intervals, arrows stenciled toward Terminal B, Annex Utilities, Baggage North. A narrow electric cart could probably once use some sections, though not this branch. Every sound carries, dripping water 3 bends away, a faint mechanical tick somewhere unseen. My own steps, the soft friction of my sleeve against concrete when I brush the wall. I stop every 20 meters and switch the light off just to listen. Nothing rushes me, nothing moans, nothing scratches at the dark. That almost makes it worse. About 50 meters in, I find the first sign that the tunnel matters to more than my imagination. A glow stick lies crushed near the wall, dry and spent, its chemical tube shattered. Beside it are scuff marks and boot prints in the dust. Not mine, not ancient either. The dust layer is disturbed but not yet resettled evenly. At least one tread pattern looks recent enough that edges remain sharp. 2 adults, maybe 3, moving toward the annex side. One dragging something or limping slightly from the left. My job never includes tracking, but 40 days of isolation teaches observation by force. I crouch and touch the print with one fingertip. Still dry, no moisture halo. So not within the last few hours if they came during the storm. Could be last night, could be yesterday. The human threat becomes less theoretical. Farther on, the tunnel branches, left toward Annex and Baggage North, right toward Terminal B utility spine, straight ahead, according to the wall map, toward the quarantine sublevel corridor circled in red on the schematic. I choose left first because that route offers storage possibilities without taking me toward the part people explicitly warn me about. Also because my survival depends on calories, not answers. I don't like admitting that, but it's true. The annex branch is narrower and drier. There are 2 locked doors on the right, both marked electrical. I leave them. Then I find a maintenance alcove with shelves of filters, cleaning chemicals, paper masks, and 2 cases of bottled water stacked behind an overturned trolley. I almost laugh from relief. I don't, because relief makes noise, but I put a hand against the concrete and close my eyes for a second. 12 1-liter bottles, dusty but sealed. There are also cartons of vending machine snacks gone stale but edible, peanut brittle, cheese crackers, mints, and vacuum-packed sandwiches that are not worth the risk. I take the water, 4 snack packets, and a handful of disposable masks. More than that slows me down too much. On the alcove wall, someone has marked a route in black marker, a line from the tower access to this alcove, then farther to the terminal service stairs. Beside it, safe if quiet, another hand has later added, in different pen, until day 27. I stare at that for a long time. People use this tunnel regularly enough to make notes, or used it. Day 27 suggests a chronology. Something changes then. Maybe a collapse. Maybe more infected getting in. Maybe human conflict. Whatever it is, I'm walking after the fact. I should go back with the water and call this a victory. The rational part of me says so immediately. 12 liters and some food materially improve my odds. It's enough to justify the risk and end the trip. But then, from somewhere deeper in the tunnel network, I hear a sound that doesn't belong to pipes or settling concrete. A human cough. One cough. Wet. Suppressed quickly. I freeze. Then silence. The sound comes from the direction of Terminal B utility spine, not the annex, maybe 60 or 70 meters away through concrete turns. I wait. Nothing. I check my watch without meaning to, just because habits survive collapse. 14:07. This is the moral point, though it doesn't announce itself that way in the moment. All the choices that look dramatic from the outside are usually practical on the inside. I have water. I have a route back. I am alone, tired, not armed beyond improvised tools, and one infected in a tunnel would be bad enough. Another survivor might be injured. Another survivor might be a trap. Another survivor might bring more people to the tower, or infection, or violence. Another survivor might also be the first decent thing I've had a chance to do for someone else in weeks. I don't move for nearly a minute. Then I set down half the water. I keep 6 bottles, stash 6 behind the filter cartons, and mark the wall with a small arrow only I'm likely to notice. Less weight, better mobility, still a gain if I make it back. The cough doesn't repeat, but I head toward it anyway because some line inside me is still intact enough to pull. The Terminal B branch curves under heavier infrastructure. I pass a valve array humming faintly, then a section where condensation beads on the pipes and falls in regular taps. The floor becomes slick. My flashlight beam catches handprints smeared on one wall at shoulder height. Not blood, just grime where someone steadies themselves. Fresh enough to stand out against older dust. The air changes too. Staler, a trace of bleach under the damp that matches the warning on the recording about the quarantine corridor and the air handling. I pull one of the paper masks on, more for smell and droplets than any illusion of true protection. At the next bend, I find a red door, industrial steel, paint scuffed, chain looped through the pull handle on my side but hanging loose because the opposite anchor has torn partially free from the wall. So that's what the radio warning means. Chained one side, not both. The door has been pulled shut by force, but the chain alone won't keep pressure off it if anything heavy pushes from the other side. I put my ear near the metal and listen. Nothing. Then, very faintly, a shifting scrape, as if something on the far side drags a shoe or sleeve. Not empty then. There's a narrow observation window set high in the door, wired glass clouded with grime. I rise slowly and angle the light low so it doesn't bounce back. The room beyond is a service intersection, lit by emergency strip lighting dim enough to flatten colors. I see a trolley on its side, a yellow biohazard bin, smears on the floor, a body against the far wall that might be dead or might be an infected too, still to show itself. No movement near the door, no person calling for help. Then, from farther down the corridor, past the intersection, a whisper, "Don't open that." I almost drop the flashlight. The voice is human, female, low and raw from thirst or overuse, coming from behind another doorway farther back, maybe slightly above floor level. Not right at the door. I keep my own voice quiet. How many? A pause. Breathing. 3 in the corridor, 1 in the room, maybe dead. I can't tell. You alone. Another pause. Longer this time. Now I am. That answer gives me less comfort than a lie would. I move to the side of the door, out of direct line with the window. Can you get to me? Why not? Leg. There's a scrape like she's shifting position. I imagine a knee injury, a fracture, a bite. My mind supplies all 3 at once. What happened? I got the door shut. She gives a short breath that might once have been a laugh. Not all the way. I ask the question that matters, and hate myself for how flat I sound when I ask it. Are you bitten? Silence. Are you bitten? I repeat, no. No hesitation on the word itself. But there is fatigue around it. I can't verify anything from here. I can't smell infection like in films because real life doesn't give that kind of clarity. I can only assess probabilities. If she is telling the truth, and I leave, I abandon a living person. If she is lying and I open wrong, I may die in a corridor beneath an airport because I confuse guilt with morality. What's your name? I ask. Leah. I'm Daniel. You in the tower? I don't answer that. She notices and doesn't push. Smart. There's another way around, she says. Service hatch past the baggage branch. It comes in behind the quarantine desk. But if you go that way and the lights trip, they'll hear, "How many people with you before?" 3. Where are they now? 1 dead. 1 ran. 1 may be locked in farther south. She breathes hard through her nose, as if controlling pain. I didn't come down here alone, if that's what you're asking. That isn't what I'm asking, but it becomes the next question anyway. Armed, knife, empty flare gun, a beat. I'm not your problem if you don't want me to be. That lands cleaner than a plea. It tells me 2 things. She knows fear works both ways, and she expects abandonment because she's been given it already. I back away from the door and look down the tunnel map in my head. Baggage branch, service hatch, behind the quarantine desk. If the schematic is right, there is indeed a secondary access loop. Tight. Probably ugly, possibly blocked. If I can come around behind the corridor, maybe I can reach her without opening the chained door and releasing whatever's pressing near it. If I fail, I trap myself in a worse position. If I succeed, and she's infected after all, I bring that risk up close. I tell her to stay quiet and sit if she can. She says, "I'm already sitting," in a tone so dry it nearly becomes human again. The baggage branch entrance is 20 meters back and marked by a half-collapsed ceiling panel. I squeeze through a side passage no wider than my shoulders in places, following stale air and old cable bundles. This section was probably never meant for regular foot traffic. I have to crouch, then crawl. My knee flares hot each time it touches concrete. The flashlight beam catches insulation fibers, old labels, rat droppings, and once a dark handprint on the wall so small it might be from a teenager. The space smells of damp dust and something sharp like cleaning solvent. My breathing gets too loud in the close dark. I stop twice just to keep from rushing. At one point I hear movement through the wall to my right. Slow shuffling, a wet bump against metal, then nothing. The infected are near enough that sound carries through structure. I hold still until my pulse settles and continue. The service hatch appears where the schematic says it should. A square panel set chest high in concrete, with a dog-wheel handle. Locked, but the bolts are exterior and old. I work them with the wrench and pry bar. Painfully slow. One squeals. I stop. Listen. No reaction. Another comes loose. Sweat runs into my eyes. The air in here doesn't move. When the panel finally opens inward an inch, a draft hits my face, carrying bleach, old blood, and stale body odor strong enough to make the back of my throat tighten. I open the hatch enough to look through. The room beyond is a former intake desk area, maybe part of the improvised quarantine processing point the journal mentions. Plastic screening curtains hang in strips, folding tables stand overturned, medical kits lie spilled open. On one wall, somebody has taped arrows and room numbers. On the floor, there are dried streaks where something is dragged or where fluids run and collect along the grout lines. Emergency lights cast everything in dirty amber. No movement in the room itself. Leah is behind a desk, 6 meters away, sitting against the wall with one leg stretched wrong in front of her. She sees the panel move and tenses, raising a small knife that shakes in her hand. "Daniel?" "Still me." She lowers the knife, but doesn't smile. She is maybe 30, maybe younger with stress added. Hair cut short unevenly, either by herself or necessity. Rain jacket dirty at the cuffs, left pant leg tied with cable near the knee as a brace. Face, grey with pain and dehydration, but her eyes are focused. No obvious bite marks on visible skin. That means little, but it helps. "How bad?" I ask, stepping through. "Ankle or lower leg?" I hear it crack when I fell. She nods toward a dead flashlight on the floor. I'm out. I give her water before I mean to. Not much. A measured amount, because too much too fast on an empty stomach can turn into vomiting. And because I'm still counting liters, even while I'm looking at another human being. She drinks like someone forcing herself not to be animal about it, which I respect immediately. "What's at the red door?" I ask, 2 infected in the corridor, when I last hear them. Maybe 3, they come and go. One keeps pushing the chain now and then. "What happened to your group?" She closes her eyes briefly. "We come in from cargo, 3 nights ago. Heard radio traffic. Thought airport means supplies, roof access, vehicles. We find some. Then one of ours answers a voice on maintenance frequency. Says there's a safe route below B. We move underground to stay off the apron. Stupid." She swallows. "There are infected. Trapped down here, but that's not the only problem. Some doors are alarmed off battery still. Some lights kick on with motion. And somebody has been using parts of the tunnel recently. Organized. Not us. You see them? No. We see signs. Caches gone. Fresh wire on a broken latch. One cooking flame in a vent shaft yesterday. Then we hear people moving, but they don't answer." She studies me. "Could be your friends." "I don't have friends down here. That's what I'm worried about." I believe her enough to keep listening. The office behind the intake desk contains more useful things than I expect. Bottled saline, sealed crackers, thermal blankets, disposable gowns. and a lockbox of basic antibiotics that might already be gold or placebo, depending on age and luck. This was a functioning emergency station, at some point. Then it failed quickly. On the far wall, a dry erase board still lists occupancy counts. All lines are smudged, except one, hold 14 transfer pending. Underneath, in another hand, someone later writes, no more transfers. The pre-arrival mystery takes clearer shape here. The airport isn't just abandoned. It becomes a holding site. Quarantine intake. Medical hold below. Transport delayed. Remote stand. 6 military plane never departs. Radio messages stop. If I line the fragments up, I get the outline of a failed evacuation that turns into containment. And containment that breaks before anyone can explain it. But outlines aren't answers. I check Leah's leg. I'm no medic, but I know enough field first aid to see it swollen badly around the ankle, with bruising tracking up the shin. Could be fracture. Could be severe sprain. She won't walk unaided. I can splint it better from the supplies here. I can maybe get her as far as the tower over an hour if nothing attacks us, and if she can stay quiet. I can also leave her with water, and a chance to survive a little longer, in this room, while I protect the tower. Both options are bad. One of them at least lets me keep my safe ground. The problem with safe ground is that it stops feeling safe once another person knows about it. Leah watches my face as if reading the equation there. You don't have to take me anywhere, she says. Just tell me which routes you know are clear. I don't know any route that stays clear. Fair. I listen at the inner corridor door. There's a muffled thud from somewhere to the south, then a dragging step, then stillness. We don't have time to stay indecisive. Underground time compresses. Air, light, and nerves make every minute feel like borrowed money. I find an airport wheelchair in a side room. That becomes the answer and another problem at once. On smooth floor, it will help. In the tunnel, it will be noise. Still, dragging her is worse. I cut strips from a plastic curtain to pad the rattling metal joints and bind loose parts. Leah helps from the floor, hands efficient despite pain. She's been practical for longer than today. As I splint her leg with a folded board and elastic wrap, she tells me what little else she knows. Her group reaches the airport following highway signs and rumors of military extraction. They arrive too late for any real authority to remain. They hide first in an employee parking structure, then move through service roads toward cargo. They hear short radio messages on scavenged equipment, enough to believe someone is coordinating movement inside the airport. One message mentions a tunnel. Another mentions lights in Concourse B. On the second night, they find fresh footprints in terminal dust and a door propped with a recently broken wedge. So yes, there are others here, or were recently, but no direct contact. Could be airport people, I say. Could be, she says. Could also be the kind who use radios to find people with supplies. I don't argue. We start moving at 15:10. I push the wheelchair backward over the smoother sections so the larger rear wheels take small debris more quietly. Leah holds the flashlight low and keeps it shaded with her hand. Every sound seems magnified. Tire tread over grit. Fabric brushing wall. My breath turning harsher as I strain. At the service hatch, I ease her through first, then close it behind us, not locked, but pulled to. We avoid the red door corridor entirely and head back toward the baggage branch. Halfway through the narrow section, we hear voices. Not infected sounds, human voices. 2 of them, muffled by concrete, somewhere beyond the main tunnel, speaking too low to catch words, then a clink of metal against metal. Leah grips the armrest so hard, I hear the vinyl creak. I cut the flashlight. We sit in total darkness. After that comes a different sound from farther away, maybe in the main tunnel, maybe up a shaft. A short burst of radio static, then a man saying clearly, tower access remains occupied. Every muscle in my body locks. Occupied. Not the tower, not someone. Tower access remains occupied. That is observation passed as information. Someone knows where I am, or thinks they do. Maybe they saw my traps. Maybe they've known for days and chosen not to act. Maybe they're bluffing into the dark, hoping someone reacts. Leah's whisper is almost inaudible. Did they say tower? I nod before remembering she can't see me. Yes, the worst thing to hear in a tunnel is your own future being discussed by strangers. We don't move for a full minute. Then I lean close to her ear. No talking, unless I ask. We retreat 3 meters into the side passage and wait. My knee pulses. Sweat cools on my back. Somewhere in the main tunnel, footsteps approach. Then stop. Approach again. 1 person, maybe 2. Careful. Not shambling. Human. A light beam slides across the mouth of our passage, but doesn't enter fully. I see only the edge of it, a pale bar moving over concrete dust. Then a voice. Male. Calm enough to be more dangerous than shouting. If you can hear this, leave the tunnel and go west. East side is sealed. No response from me. He waits. Then adds, "We're not hunting you." Still I say nothing. His beam lingers another second, then withdraws. Footsteps recede. After 20 more seconds I hear a second set follow. Then nothing. Maybe that's mercy. Maybe manipulation. Maybe there really are organized survivors here trying to control movement and keep people out of certain sections. The problem is that any stranger competent enough to survive this long is competent enough to lie convincingly. When I finally move again, it is west, exactly opposite the direction he suggests, but only because west leads back to my access point. The return takes too long. 2 times I have to stop and listen while infected sounds drift through walls or vents. Once the wheelchair catches on a floor joint and tips hard enough that Leah bites her sleeve to keep from crying out. By the time we reach the annex alcove, my arms are shaking from effort and my throat feels lined with dust. I retrieve the hidden water and nearly leave 2 bottles behind because I miscount in my exhaustion. Leah catches it and says very quietly, "You left one." That tells me I'm running close to my limits. At the tower stair door, relief arrives too early. The service corridor outside is empty. Good. The stairwell remains secured from below. Good. I get Leah through, close the utilities door, and start up the concrete stair with her leaning on my shoulder. The wheelchair abandoned because it won't manage the landings quietly, and I refuse to leave wheel tracks leading upward. Her weight is not heavy, but dead weight and pain make everything awkward. She tries to help. Sometimes she can. Sometimes the injured leg buckles and sends a sharp grunt through clenched teeth. 2 floors up, just below operations level, we hear movement below. Not one set of footsteps. Several. Slow. Then a metallic click at the utilities access door we just shut. I don't look down. I keep moving. Leah feels me tense and whispers, "They follow." I don't know. We reach the operations level. I get her into the office with Marta's journal because it has the least direct line of sight from the hall, and 1 window I can cover. I hand her the knife back. She looks almost offended. "You think I'm a risk. Keep it," she says. "I think everybody's a risk." She accepts that, which is reason enough not to regret the climb yet. I lock the office from inside, lower the blinds, and listen. Nothing in the corridor, nothing on the stairs. The sound below could have been infected leaning at the door after hearing us. Could have been people. Could have been pipes amplified by adrenaline. But the radio message in the tunnel removes coincidence from the easy explanations. We spend the next hour in controlled silence. I give Leah more water, 1 snack pack, and the antibiotics box to hold, because I haven't decided whether to use any. I check her for fever without making it obvious. Skin warm from exertion, not hot. Pupils responsive. No confusion beyond pain and exhaustion. Still no visible bite. I ask again. She answers the same. No. Then she lifts the hem of her jacket and shows me bruising along her ribs, where she hits a railing when she falls. That's all the damage I've got, besides the leg. If I start lying, you'll know. I don't tell her that by the time I know, it may be too late. From the office window, through a slit in the blind, I can see part of Terminal B across the inner service road. The glass reflects afternoon light in flat grey panes. At 16:40, one of those panes flickers from inside, a light moving, not random, directional. Someone with a torch or covered lantern passing along the concourse. Leah sees it too, and says nothing. By evening I have a stranger in my tower base, extra water in cache, a tunnel route, proof of other survivors, proof they know the tower is occupied, and no clear way to keep any of those facts from colliding. The first infected encounter I ever have at close range comes back to me then, maybe because fatigue makes memory vivid. It is day 6, and I'm still dumb enough to think speed solves risk. I go down to the terminal connector, looking for bottled drinks in a kiosk. The hall is silent, except for one rolling suitcase moving a few centimeters every time the wind from a broken door reaches it. I smell burnt coffee from some machine that dies days earlier, and the sweet wrong smell of something organic starting to turn in hidden corners. I'm kneeling behind a counter, stuffing warm soda bottles into my backpack, when I hear a shoe squeak. Not a zombie growl, just rubber on polished tile. I look up and see a woman in airline uniform standing 40 feet away beneath a departures board gone black. One shoe missing. Blood dried dark down the front of her stockings. She isn't charging. She isn't cinematic. She is just looking in my direction, with her head slightly turned, as if listening for an announcement. Then she starts walking toward the sound of my breathing. That's the truth of it. They don't need dramatics. They only need persistence. I get away then, because I know the side doors, because she slips on spilled brochures, because there is space. In a tunnel there is less space, and more repetition. A single infected in a corridor becomes a system failure. As the evening darkens, I bring Leah upstairs one more level to the equipment floor. Not the cab. Not yet. She doesn't need line of sight, and I don't need anyone mapping the top level of my refuge, unless I commit to trust. I settle her in the room beside the communications racks, where there are no windows and one inward opening door I can block. I give her the compact blanket. She gives me information in return without my asking much. Her group hears the same gunshots I do last night. They also see distant lights, in the terminal east wing on day 37. Before that, on day 34, one of them finds footprints inside a shuttered cafe, fresh enough to show tread and spilled flour behind the counter. Not infected, human, they avoid contact. Smart. Later, on day 38, someone transmits on a handheld using an old airport call sign and offers safe shelter above ground. That message draws one member of her group into the tunnels. He doesn't come back. So yes, the radios are being used strategically by somebody, or several somebodies, and the airport is not empty in the way I've been pretending it is. We talk quietly for the first time, like people, instead of variables. She used to work inventory for a hotel supplier. Not military, not hardened, practical in the same way I am practical, because no one else is coming, and panic doesn't stack water bottles or splinter leg. She asks what I do here, before. I tell her communications tech, radios and system maintenance. She looks around at the patched battery inverters and says, "That tracks." I almost ask where she'd go if she healed, and I still had the tower. I don't, because it sounds too much like planning for a future, measured in more than 2 days. Near midnight, a new sound crosses the airfield. An engine, not aircraft, ground vehicle, small diesel or generator motor, distant and uneven. It starts somewhere near cargo, runs for perhaps 30 seconds, then stops abruptly. The infected on the tarmac shift west again. A few drift toward the sound's last location. In the terminal, a light appears at ground level and moves behind glass for 5 full seconds before cutting out. Whoever else is here is active, coordinated enough to move with darkness and sound discipline. That makes them more dangerous than the infected, because the infected rarely surprise me anymore. Sleep comes in fragments. I wake twice to wind rattling the window seals, once to Leah trying not to cry when she rolls wrong on her leg, once to a dream so realistic I nearly answer the radio before I'm fully awake. In the dream, a controller I know from before the outbreak asks me to check the transmitter rack because Flight 282 is inbound and nobody can raise tower. His voice is so ordinary that waking hurts. Morning on day 41 arrives cold and clear. The storm has scrubbed the air enough that I can see almost to the far perimeter fences. The airport looks stripped clean. Dark runways, white service markings, dead aircraft, silent terminals. Human civilization paused and arranged in geometries too expensive to let nature reclaim quickly. It is beautiful in the wrong way. Leah's swelling is worse but stable. She can put almost no weight on the leg. We both know that means she stays, or I risk losing both of us trying to move again too soon. I spend the first hours reorganizing supplies. 12 liters from the tunnel, 6 from the cache, filtered rainwater, More calories than yesterday, still not abundance. Enough to think beyond immediate dehydration. Enough that I can consider what matters next. Defend the tower, leave the airport, or learn more about the tunnel and the people using it. Leaving the airport sounds simple, until I look through binoculars. Perimeter roads have abandoned vehicles locked in place like clots. The access highway beyond the cargo yards is blocked by a jackknifed fuel tanker, and at least 20 civilian cars. There are infected moving even out there, small at this distance but visible in clusters, where shade falls. The city skyline to the south shows no smoke this morning, which is not reassuring. It just means fires already burn out or move elsewhere. The tower remains one of the safest structures I can currently control. Around 9:30, while Leah dozes, I go through Marta's journal in full chronological order. I should have done that earlier, but survival often turns information into a luxury until it becomes urgent. The later entries matter most. Day 24. Security woman leaves at dawn to check lower intake route. Does not return. Hear shouting from sublevel around noon. Not hours. Day 25. Ellison says plane at stand 6 has priority cargo and med staff on board. Says they're waiting for escort. Doesn't say from where. No escort comes. Day 26. Ground voice using old operations call sign tells us to move to Concourse B. We do not. Day 27. Noise in tunnel after light cycle. Somebody tries stair door. Not infected footsteps. Too careful. Day 28. If tower is lost, use west utility branch. Do not take south corridor. They sealed people in. There's that word again. They. Always external. Always implied authority or group. No names. No uniforms described. Whoever they are, Marta never trusts them. Tucked inside the final pages, I find something I missed before. A baggage claim ticket stub with a number written on the back. Locker 214-B North. Could be useless. Could be a key to stored supplies. Could be Marta's note for herself about where they hide something. The tunnel route reaches baggage north. The choice unfolds again in front of me. Leah wakes to find me staring at the stub and says, "You've got the face." What face? The one where you've decided to do something bad for your own safety. That's just my normal face now. Where are you going? I tell her about the locker ticket. She rubs sleep from one eye and doesn't try to stop me. If you go, she says, take a different return route if you can. Anyone listening knows your tunnel access line now. She's right. The tower utilities door may already be watched. If organized survivors want me out or want what I have, they'll use my habits against me. The tunnel still matters, but not the same way. Knowledge shifts risk. I set up the closest thing I can manage to security before leaving. Leah in the equipment room, with water, knife, one flare, and explicit instructions not to open for any voice unless I use a phrase only she knows. I rig a line of metal fittings on string across the lower stair, so anyone coming up makes noise. I move my main stash farther from obvious hiding places. Then I leave again around midday, this time through the tower base and into the service corridor above ground level, aiming for the terminal connector, rather than the tunnel. It is my first time crossing exposed interior airport space in days, and I hate every meter of it. The connector bridge from tower annex to terminal service wing is mostly glass on one side, blind concrete on the other. Outside, the apron bakes under pale sun. Heat lifts from the concrete in wavering sheets. An abandoned baggage tug sits below with one door open. Two infected wander near a catering truck 30 meters away, moving slowly enough that I can time my steps to their direction changes if I stay out of sight. The bridge smells of dust and old recirculated air. Somewhere farther ahead, a loose advertisement panel taps gently against a frame with each movement of the wind. The terminal itself is a museum of interruption. Check-in counters half manned by no one. Security ropes still strung, digital screens dead, a child's pink suitcase lying open with clothes folded inside, as if somebody plans to return within minutes. I move through back-of-house corridors when I can, avoiding main halls where sound spreads and sightlines cut both ways. My boot prints join older ones in the dust. Not many. Human traffic here is limited and recent. Some prints overlap each other at different ages. There are definitely at least two other groups, or repeated movement from one organized group. One tread I recognize from the tunnel. Another, Lighter, maybe Leah's group. At the baggage north access hall, I smell decay more strongly than anywhere else today. Not overwhelming, just the dry sweet sour note of bodies, somewhere sealed and warming, mixed with old disinfectant. A security gate stands half open. Behind it, the baggage hall stretches dim and cavernous. Conveyor belts frozen mid-life, rubber flaps hanging still. Locker banks line one wall near an information kiosk. Many have already been forced open. Locker 214 is not. The key is gone, naturally, but the metal hasp is old. The pry bar gets it after 2 ugly minutes. Inside I find a canvas airport courier bag, a half-empty water bottle, a fleece jacket, and a sealed plastic tub containing exactly what Marta might hide. 6 energy gels, 2 packets of nuts, a compact flashlight, a handheld radio with spare battery, and a folded note. West route to stand 6 blocked from above. Use baggage drop shaft ladder, if plane still there. If not, leave airport. No signature, no date. The plane still there. Stand 6. Remote stand 6 from the log entry and journal. Military transport delayed. Medical hold below. If the plane is still on the apron after 40 days, it may hold supplies, bodies, answers, or nothing useful. Reaching it from baggage drop shaft ladder sounds insane, and therefore probably once practical. A hidden route from baggage systems to the remote stand service area. Airports are full of invisible movement paths like that. As I repack the bag, I hear footsteps. Fast. Human. Not right outside the locker bank, but in the hall beyond the security gate. More than one person. I kill the flashlight and crouch behind the kiosk. Voices. Male, then female. Too low to catch words. They stop near the gate. I risk a glance through a gap in the brochure rack. 2 people, both carrying backpacks. One with a baseball cap, one with a yellow safety vest over dark clothes. They look lean, alert, and exhausted like everyone left alive probably looks. The man holds a crowbar. The woman has a radio clipped high on her shoulder strap and a long screwdriver tucked through her belt. They aren't soldiers. They're not casual either. The woman studies the floor. Fresh, she says. The man looks into the baggage hall. Could be him. Could be him. I stay still enough that my calves cramp. The woman lifts her radio, but doesn't transmit. He took someone up yesterday. You sure they want contact? That is enough for me. There's a service hatch behind the locker wall, leading to conveyor maintenance. I ease it open from crouch height and slip through just as the man steps farther inside. The hatch closes with the smallest possible touch, but in a silent hall, even that feels enormous. I wait in darkness, while their footsteps move nearer to where I was. The woman says, "Bag's gone." The man answers, then he reads notes, or their own note. Either way, they are part of the airport pattern, not random drifters. The conveyor maintenance path is cramped and greasy, but it keeps me hidden. It also drops me unexpectedly into a lower service shaft with a fixed ladder and warm, moving air. A stenciled sign on the wall reads, Apron, Access/Stand, 6, Service. For once, the note is literal. I descend because retreating back toward people who may already know my route makes less sense than continuing toward an unknown with at least the chance of isolation. The shaft opens into a low concrete passage, ending at a steel door. When I crack it, sunlight cuts across darkness, and the smell of jet fuel hits me so hard, it's like stepping back into my old life for half a second. I'm beneath the remote stand service platform. Stand 6 lies beyond a barrier of baggage containers and a parked fuel bowser. And there it is, the military transport plane. Large fuselage, matte gray, rear ramp closed, nose angled slightly off-center, as if the tug alignment is never corrected. No visible damage from this side, no movement around it. The open apron between me and the plane is about 60 meters of bad idea, but the service platform offers partial cover along the edge. If infected see movement from the terminal side, they're far enough that I might still break line of sight. If the other survivors track me here, then none of that matters. I make the run in stages. Platform to container, container to tug, tug to wheel chock stack. Each dash controlled, breath measured. Heat radiates off the concrete and carries the smell of oil, rubber, and sun-cooked metal. The airfield seems offensively bright after tunnels and corridors. I can feel exposure like weight. Up close, the transport plane is worse than from afar, because it is more ordinary. Serial markings, cargo door latch, chipped paint around service panels, a machine built for order sitting dead in a world where order fails. The side hatch near the front landing gear stands partly open, with a fold ladder extended halfway and jammed. Someone tries to get in or out in a hurry and never finishes. Inside the hatch, the air is oven hot and sealed, with the layered smell of old hydraulic fluid, disinfectant, some cooked aluminum, and something human that has gone dry instead of rotten. I stand still for a moment on the half-jammed ladder and let my eyes adjust. The cargo bay is dim even in daylight, because most of the aircraft sits shut, and the open hatch only throws a hard white angle across the deck. Dust hangs in the beam. The metal floor rails shine where crates once move over them. The silence inside is wrong in a different way than the silence in the terminal. Outside, the airport feels abandoned. Inside the plane, it feels interrupted in the middle of a task that matters. There are pallets still strapped down. Not all of them. One pallet net hangs cut open and collapsed, its cargo partly removed or shifted. Another sits wrapped in cloudy plastic with black stenciled lettering I can't read from here. Toward the forward bulkhead, there are 2 rows of fold-down seats. One still locked upright, one open. A helmet lies on the floor below them, beside a clipped harness strap. No movement, no voices, no flies, just heat. I pull myself the rest of the way in and keep low. My boots make a hollow sound on the cargo deck. I hate it immediately. The first body is near the left sidewall, half under the shadow of a medical crate. Uniform, boots, one sleeve rolled up. He looks more collapsed than attacked, back against the wall, chin on chest, hands empty. The skin at his face is drawn tight and dark with dehydration. No visible blood from where I stand. The second body is forward, near the cockpit access, lying face down beside a dropped headset. Neither moves. I watch longer than I need to. Still nothing. The wrapped pallet closest to the hatch carries medical markings, PPE, IV fluids, sterile packs, a red diamond symbol on one side I don't want to misread. The cut-open pallet is better news. Brown cartons, military rations, or close enough, water cases, oral rehydration salts. I crouch beside it and feel the first real surge of stupid hope I've had since coming out here. Whoever opens this load doesn't take everything. Maybe they are interrupted. Maybe they only need a little. Maybe they can't carry more across the apron. Either way, there are still supplies here. A lot of them. I open one carton, 12 vacuum-sealed meal packs. Another, bottled water, warm as bath water but intact. Another, battery packs and field dressings. Under the top layer of a supply crate, I find blister packs of painkillers and 2 compact medical pouches. I take one pouch and check the date without fully reading it. Good enough. Better than most things I've been living on. Then I see the clipboard. It's clipped to a cargo restraint ring near the forward side of the open pallet, half under a web strap, as if someone shoves it there in a hurry. I pull it free and read in the strip of light from the hatch. Airlift support / remote SDN6. Medical support equipment. Transfer hold below. Do not loud until ground clearance. Escort required for sub-level movement. Secondary comms only if primary unreliable. Below that, in blue pen, a tighter handwritten note. Ground gave all clear at 1840. Tower denied at 1844. Same call sign both times. No movement from escort team. Keeping hatch secure. No signature. Just initials I don't recognize. I read it twice. Same call sign both times. That matches the recording. It matches Marta's journal. It matches the voice on the radio using old operations identifiers. Either somebody is confused in the middle of a collapse, or somebody is deliberately using airport channels to control where people go. 40 days later, I still don't know which explanation scares me more. I slide the clipboard into the courier bag from baggage north and keep moving. At the forward access, I find the cockpit door ajar. The cabin above and ahead is even hotter, with trapped sunlight turning the instrument panels into dark mirrors. One of the pilots sits slumped in the left seat, harness still on, cap on his lap. He is long dead. The right seat is empty. On the center console lies a folded airport map, a grease pencil, and a hand radio with the battery removed. There's a dried smear on the overhead panel where someone's palm presses hard enough to leave salt and dirt. I don't spend long in there. I take the radio anyway, then I take the battery, because sometimes dead things only need contact cleaning and luck. In the side pocket I find a flight folder, with the usual paperwork and one page that matters more than the rest. Not a manifest, a message form. Hold. All boarding. Hold below unstable. Remain at stand 6. Do not accept walk-up transfer. Verify call signs by secondary channel. There is no timestamp visible. Because the lower section is torn away, I feel the shape of the airport shifting again, around what little I know. A quarantine hold below. People waiting for transfer. Crew ordered not to take walk-up patients. Conflicting calls from tower and ground. Somebody trying to move people through this place using radios and authority, until authority means nothing. In the cargo bay below me, something taps metal. I freeze. One tap, then another. Not from inside the aircraft, from the ladder or the service platform below the hatch. I go down low beside the pallet and listen. A shoe scuffs, very careful. Human. Then a voice from outside, low enough that it almost blends with wind under the fuselage. You in there? Male. Not loud, not panicked. I say nothing. Another voice answers from a little farther off. Female. Don't crowd the hatch. I know that one. The woman from baggage north, yellow vest. So they follow me, or they already track the same route and expect me to use it. The man tries again. We're not here to pull you out. That is exactly the kind of sentence a person uses when they know you're already thinking about being pulled out. I move one step backward, then another, keeping the pallet between me and the hatch. If they come in, the plane becomes a corridor with wings. Nowhere to go but past them, or deeper into a dead cockpit. The woman speaks again. If you found paperwork, take it and move. The lower route won't stay clear. I keep my voice level when I answer. Who are you? A pause. Then the man says, not military, not control, just still here. Not an answer, which makes him either cautious or practiced. What do you want? The same thing you do, the woman says. Time. Wind moves under the fuselage with a low moan. Somewhere far out on the field, an infected gives a thin carrying cry that ends almost immediately. I step close enough to the hatch to see them without fully exposing myself. The man with the crowbar stands beside a wheel chock, mid-30s maybe, beard grown and rough, baseball cap faded dark with sweat. The woman is farther back near the service barrier, radio still clipped to her shoulder. Both look tired enough to be real. Both also keep enough distance from the hatch to tell me they understand sight lines. You're the ones on the radios, I say. The woman's expression doesn't change, some of them, using old call signs. That gets people listening, that also gets people killed. Her jaw tightens very slightly. It also kept some alive. The man glances past the aircraft toward the terminal and says, this isn't the place. If you've got someone in the tower, get them out of B-side before dark. My grip tightens on the bag. Why? He looks at me then. Really looks. Because the red doors aren't holding. I don't answer. The woman adds, South Corridor pushes every night now. Today worse. Something moved them from below. Moved them. Not led, not commanded. Just pressure. Sound. Failure. Whatever turns a contained risk into a migrating one. I ask the next question, because it matters more than almost anything else. You know the tower's occupied. Why haven't you come up? The man gives the smallest shrug. Because height without trust is a trap. That, at least, sounds honest. Before I can say anything else, the woman turns her head sharply toward the terminal. Wait, I hear it a second later. A noise from the tower. Not a voice. Not radio. A flare. Red light blooms high above the service roofs, visible even in daylight as a dirty crimson pulse from one of the tower windows below the cab. It spits sparks once, then again, trailing smoke against the pale sky before burning lower behind the concrete line. Leah. For half a second, everything in me tries to divide into too many priorities at once. Plane. Supplies. Documents. Unknown survivors. Unknown breach. Tower. The decision is ugly and simple. I snatch 2 ration cartons loose from the pallet, shove them toward the hatch, then kick them down to the platform. Not because I'm gifting anything, because I can't carry them and run. I shoulder the courier bag, grab 1 water case by the plastic strap, and head for the ladder. The man steps back immediately to clear the opening. Smart. The woman does the same. If that flare's yours, she says, don't take the baggage haul back. Too exposed. What route? Fuel service trench to utilities. Marked blue doors. That could be a trap. It could also be exactly the kind of practical guidance people give when there's no time left to play games. The man points once toward the far side of the stand. Keep low by the hydrant line. If you hear a whistle, stop moving. I almost ask why. Then I hear the first distant metallic banging from somewhere under the apron, faint but regular, and I stop asking. I run, not all at once, controlled bursts, because I learned days ago that panic pace burns your legs fast and turns breathing loud. I keep low beside the fuel hose pits and painted service lines, dragging the water case hard enough to bruise my fingers through the handle. The sun on the apron is brutal after the aircraft shade. Heat comes off the concrete in waves. The smell of fuel and dust coats the back of my throat. Halfway to the trench, I hear movement behind a baggage container and see 2 infected drift out into the open. One in a reflective vest, one in dark airport slacks. They are far enough that if they haven't seen me yet, I can still keep it that way. Then a whistle sounds once from behind me. Short, sharp. I stop instantly. A 3rd infected lurches from under the nose gear service steps 5 meters ahead. Drawn by motion, I don't fully make out until it's already there. The whistle is a warning, not a signal. The infected is male, maybe a mechanic by the coveralls. One side of his face raw and dark where skin peels from old injury. He isn't running, he is just close, and close is enough on an open stand where one stumble turns into noise. I ease the water case down without letting the plastic bottles clatter and shift left behind a ground power cart. The infected turns toward the last sound, head tilted, mouth working around no clear breath. I can smell hot fabric and old blood even in the fuel stink. It takes 2 uneven steps in my direction. I wait until it is almost alongside the cart, then drive the pry bar sideways into its knee. That's not a heroic move. It's maintenance logic. Break the joint. Create distance. The leg folds wrong. It collapses hard onto one hand and a shoulder, with a wet crack and a burst of noise that seems far too loud. Before it can find leverage again, I come down once at the back of the neck with all the weight I can manage from a bad angle. Then I move. The whistle does not sound again. Good. Either the strangers are still watching, or they've wisely stopped helping. The fuel service trench is exactly what it sounds like. A shallow recessed channel running along the stand edge where lines and access covers break the concrete. Low enough to hide part of my body if I crouch, not low enough to feel safe. I follow it to the blue door the woman mentions. Utilities. Unlocked. Inside, cooler air and pipe noise. I let myself breathe once. The route connects to an underground service corridor that smells of dust and diesel, not the wetter mineral damp of the main maintenance tunnel. Different network. This airport has too many layers. Passenger routes, staff routes, utility routes, quarantine routes, service shafts, baggage paths. You can disappear in a place like this long before the world ends. Afterward, the hidden parts only become more valuable. I move fast because the flare means immediate trouble, and because every minute I stay away increases the odds that Leah is facing it alone. The corridor bends twice and rises by a ramp into the tower annex side. Not the same access I used earlier. That alone tells me the woman does know the airport well enough to be dangerous, or useful, or both. At the top of the ramp, I stop. Voices, close. One is Leah, thin from pain and control, but hers. The other is male, unknown, speaking softly enough that I only catch fragments through the concrete stairwell wall. Just need passage. Leah says something I can't hear. The man again. Not trying to force the top. I move up one step at a time and look through the narrow wired glass panel in the fire door. 2 people in the stairwell below equipment level. The baseball cap man from the baggage hall and another older man I haven't seen before, broad-shouldered, grey at the temples, holding a bolt cutter loosely in one hand like he'd rather not need it. Not threatening the door. Not exactly. The door itself is still shut. My noise line of metal fittings lies broken on one step, which means they come up far enough to hit it, and then stop. Good discipline. Leah is on the other side of the corridor, half concealed in the equipment room doorway, with the flare gun in her hand and my wrench in the other. She must crawl or hobble into position to fire the flare out the stairwell window. The burn mark on the wall behind her shows where it kicks and spits. The older man sees me through the panel first. His eyes flick once to the bag on my shoulder, then back to my face. "There you are," he says, almost conversational. I unlock the fire door, but keep the chain engaged, opening it only far enough to stand in the gap. "What do you want?" "Not a fight," the older man says. His voice is familiar. "Not from sight, from audio. The recording in the maintenance room, or close enough that my neck tightens. We need the west stair clear." "For what?" "Because south access is gone." Behind him, somewhere lower in the tower base, a heavy impact sounds through the concrete, then another. Not human footsteps, not careful movement, pressure, a lot of it. The baseball cap man glances downward. "They're in the service corridor," Leah says from behind me. "Who are they?" The older man answers without turning. "Whatever gets pushed north when the lower quarantine doors fail." Not comforting. Also not a sentence a person improvises under no pressure. I keep my voice flat. "Who are you?" For a second I think I mishear him, because the journal has made that name half a ghost already. But his expression doesn't change. Just tired. Direct. "Marta writes like you're dead," I say. She assumes a lot when people don't come back on time. That is not quite a joke, but it has the dry edge of one. He looks older than I expect from the recording. Hard to tell what's time and what's the last month. He nods toward the lower stair. "We kept to the terminal side because the tower stays safer if fewer people know its access. That was true until today. Something opened or broke in the south branch. Now everything under B-side is shifting. Why use the radios? To warn some people, to move others away from us." He doesn't bother pretending that sounds noble. If everybody answers, everybody dies in the same corridor. Behind him comes another impact, then a metallic shriek from lower down, chain on a door, bracket failing. The noise rolls up the stairwell and makes all of us hold still for 1 second too long. "You could have said all this earlier," I tell him. "You would have believed us." The baseball cap man says, "There's a west utility branch from here to the substation. Secure door, small room, dry. We've used it as fallback. If you're staying, fine, but not here." I look at Leah. She's pale, standing on one good leg, with the flare gun trembling only a little from fatigue. I look at the courier bag. I look at Leah. She's pale, standing on one good leg, with the flare gun trembling only a little from fatigue. I look at the courier bag, the water case, the tower above me with its sight lines and radios and habit. Then the lower stair bangs again, closer. Someone or something slams into a fire door below hard enough that dust shakes from the frame. This is the tactical decision that matters more than any supply count. I can keep the tower and risk a siege from below with an injured person who cannot move fast, and 2 strangers in the stairwell who may or may not be telling the truth. Or I can abandon the safest position I have used for 40 days, trust a man whose name lives in a dead woman's journal, and go down into another hidden part of the airport, because staying put has finally become more dangerous than movement. I hate that the right answer feels like surrender. I say to Leah, "Can you make one more move?" She doesn't ask where. "If you give me 60 seconds. Ellison hears that and lowers the bolt cutter fully to the floor. A deliberate sign. "Take only what matters," he says, "not what weighs." That's easy advice to give when the tower isn't your whole month. Still, he's right. I leave more than I thought possible in the next 90 seconds. Spare tools, office supplies, half the filtered rainwater because weight kills speed, the shortbread tin I've been saving for no reason except hope, my extra jacket, one entire storage cache I spent days building. I take radios, batteries, medical pouch, Marta's journal, the flight documents, food dense enough to justify mass, and all the sealed water I can reasonably carry between me and Leah. The rest stays. When I come back to the stairwell, the lower impacts have become a chaotic rhythm, not constant. Bursts, several bodies, or one body, several times. Hard to know which. Human voices join them briefly from somewhere below and cut off. Move. Ellison says. We go down one level, not up, and through an admin hall I've barely used because it dead ends at a records room and a locked service closet. The closet is already open now. Behind it is a maintenance panel wall, and behind that, a narrow passage I never find because the seam is painted over and half blocked by old shelving. Maintenance tunnel beneath the airport. Not grand, not dramatic, just practical, hidden, and exactly the sort of thing a building this size accumulates. Somebody knows to hide the access because knowledge is shelter. The passage drops steeply by concrete steps into dark. The baseball cap man goes first with a hooded flashlight. Ellison and I half carry Leah between us. She doesn't complain beyond one sharp intake of breath at the third landing. The air gets cooler fast, drier than the quarantine branch. Better ventilated. Good. Above us, somewhere back in the tower, metal crashes. No one looks back. The west utility branch is older than the main tunnel and less finished. Rawer concrete, exposed pipe insulation, little chalk markings on the wall that predate the outbreak by years. This feels like infrastructure rather than operations, the kind of place only engineers and maintenance staff ever bother remembering exists. There are no infected sounds here, no recent scuffs except the ones from Ellison's group, just the dry echo of 4 people moving carefully underground. After about 80 meters, the woman in the yellow vest appears out of the dark, a head with a flashlight and 2 canvas sacks slung across her chest. She must take another route from the plane and beat us here. Her face shifts when she sees Leah still alive, but only slightly. You made it, she says. Barely, Leah answers. The woman nods once, accepting the tone. To me, she says, I'm Rana. At least now I have a name to attach to the yellow vest. We reach the substation door, and I understand immediately why they use it. Thick steel, internal crossbar, no windows. The room beyond is narrow but dry, maybe once a cable relay chamber or service control space. There's a bench, old breaker cabinets, 1 floor drain, and a vent shaft too small for a person. Shelving along one wall holds supplies better organized than anything I've managed in the tower. Water, canned food, hand tools, tarps, filters, lanterns, rope, 2 folding cots, and a crate of documents sealed in plastic. They have been here a while. The shock of seeing a prepared shelter after so long alone is almost worse than fear. It makes the airport feel inhabited in a way I've resisted believing. Once the door bars shut, quiet falls hard. Not silence. We can still hear the low mechanical pulse of distant systems through the wall, and once or twice something thumps somewhere deep in the tunnels. Too far to classify. But the immediate pursuit, if there is one, no longer matters. Leah sinks onto a cot and finally lets herself shake. I set down the bag and water and only then notice how badly my hands are trembling. My fingers are so cramped around the handle marks that it takes effort to straighten them. No one talks for a minute. Then Ellison says, "You got into stand 6. Not a question. I nod. Anything useful? Paperwork. I pull the clipboard and torn message forms from the courier bag and hand them over, because at this point, information hoarding is just another kind of stupidity. They had conflicting clearances, same call sign on different channels, orders to hold transfers below. Do not accept walk-ups. Rana reads over his shoulder, while the baseball cap man, who eventually gives his name as Micah, checks Leah's splint with gentler hands than I expect from the crowbar. He used to work airport fire support. He says later, not a paramedic. Enough training to be dangerous only if overconfident. He doesn't seem overconfident. Ellison reads the handwritten note once and exhales through his nose. That fits. With what? I ask. With the last day before we lose control of the field. He sits on the bench, paperwork in hand, and for the first time he looks less like a man delivering instructions and more like someone who has been carrying a burden because no one else is left to hand it to. Airport gets turned into a staging point when the hospitals start filling. Not officially at first. Just med flights, security cordons, redirected arrivals, holding rooms. Then the holding rooms become quarantine. Then sub-level service, because nobody wants sick people visible in terminals where families can see them. There's talk of transferring critical cases out by military transport. Stand 6 is one of those planes, and it never leaves, I say. No. He taps the paper. Because sometime near the end, 2 sets of orders start hitting the field, some through official channels, some copied well enough to pass in a rush. Ground tells one thing, Tower says another. Operations gets told to move escort teams, then told to stand down. Security gets redirected from quarantine doors that are already short-staffed. We spend hours thinking it's confusion. Maybe some of it is, but after a point, it's too consistent. Rana says quietly, someone is trying to move people through specific routes, or keep specific routes open. Micah adds, I think about the voices in the tunnel, the warnings, the lures, the old call signs. For what? No one answers immediately. That is how I know the mystery remains bigger than any one explanation. Leah drinks slowly from a fresh bottle and says, your group's been using the radios the same way. Ellison doesn't deny it. To keep people away from the South Branch. By lying. By surviving. There isn't much argument left in that room after the day we've had, but there is enough honesty for discomfort. I ask the question that has been building since he speaks his name. Marta. His face changes in a very small, tired way. Last I saw her was day 28. She took a cache toward Tower after the lower service doors started failing. I doubled back when we heard movement under the quarantine corridor. Never found her again. He looks at me. You found the journal? Yes. Then she made it farther than I thought. I tell him about the maintenance room, the recorder, the supplies. He closes his eyes briefly at that. Maybe in relief, maybe in grief, maybe because both have started to feel the same. We settle into practical tasks, because that is what people do when explanations thin out. Micah rewraps Leah's leg properly and confirms what I already suspect. Bad fracture or break near the ankle. Maybe worse. She'll need days before she can move any distance even with support. Rana inventories what I bring from the plane. Ellison studies the flight paperwork and old tunnel schematic together, then pulls a second map from the plastic document crate that doesn't fully match mine. There is another branch, fainter, older, marked as decommissioned fuel service and emergency transit under the original terminal expansion. One segment runs near the quarantine hold below B, and another reaches toward the perimeter substation. On my map, it is blank space. On his, someone pencils a line and one note. Unlisted access. A secured check drain gate. That is all. The room grows colder as the day outside fades. Underground, time blurs unless you force it into numbers, so I keep writing them. Day 41, approximately 1850 when we bar the door. Water now, enough for several days if rationed. Food, better than I've had since the outbreak. Occupants, 5 living. Radios, 4. 2 reliable, 1 injured severely. Immediate threats, tunnel breach to east, unknown organized voice traffic, infected migration from South Branch, possible observation of tower and stand routes by others. Shelter status, temporary but defensible. Writing it down makes it real. It also makes it manageable. Later, when the first shock of movement wears off, I ask the question I've avoided because I'm not sure I want the answer. The voices using our call signs. Do you know who they are? Rana and Micah both look at Ellison. That tells me enough already. He folds the paperwork carefully before he answers. No, not for certain. He stares at the steel door, as if it's a screen holding old footage. But on the last night before the field breaks completely, one of the operations consoles starts transmitting from a room with no staff in it. We verify that physically. Empty chair, live mic, wrong call sign. After that, we stop trusting anything that doesn't come through secondary or face-to-face. I let the words settle. There is always a temptation in a place like this to turn the unexplained into something supernatural because that makes ignorance feel dramatic instead of administrative. I don't do that. I know radio patch loops. I know damaged repeaters, stuck mics, cross-coupling. battery glitches, human impersonation, panic, and how authority sounds when anyone can imitate it. A dead room can transmit if the system behind it is broken in the right way. A calm liar can sound more official than a frightened professional. None of that makes the airport less frightening. It makes it more believable. Around what I estimate is 21 o'clock, we test the radios from the substation room. Weather hiss, a distant burst of someone cursing on a civic band frequency miles away, probably not the airport at all. Then, faintly, on a maintenance frequency, one sentence: Stand 6 is empty. Tower is dark. No demand for response. Just information sent into the field, like bait or notice. I don't touch the transmit key. Neither does anyone else. Leah is asleep by then, feverless but worn down to something childlike by pain. Rana sits near the vent, writing her own inventory in a notebook with precise block letters. Micah sharpens a utility blade on a stone he keeps wrapped in cloth. Ellison spreads the 2 tunnel maps and the flight forms under a lantern, and traces lines I still don't fully understand. I should feel safer than I do. The room is secure. The door is solid. We have more food, more water, more people to keep watch. But safety is not a switch. It's a ratio, and all our new advantages come tied to new uncertainties. The tower may already be lost. The aircraft at Stand 6 still holds more supplies than we can carry. The south branch beneath Terminal B has failed, or is failing. Somebody still uses the airport radios after dark, and now I know there are parts of this place not on the maps I trusted. Sometime deep in the night, while Micah takes first watch and the rest of us drift in and out of shallow sleep, a vibration runs through the concrete floor. Not an explosion, not close, more like a heavy door or gate moving somewhere far below us. Metal on track, slow, deliberate. Everyone wakes at once, not fully, but enough to listen. The sound comes again. Rana's whisper is barely breath. That's not East Branch. Ellison is already sitting up. No. We wait. A third time. Farther off now, or deeper. Then, nothing. No infected banging after it. No human voices. Just the low mechanical thrum of an airport that should be dead, and isn't entirely. In the lantern light, Ellison reaches across the map and taps a place beyond the quarantine hold, past the red-marked doors and the utility branches we know. There's something past this section, he says quietly. Something none of us have seen yet. I look at the note on the old penciled line. Check drain gate. Beneath the abandoned airport, below the terminals and the tower and the silent runways with their flickering lights, there is more structure than I have walked, and more history than I have recovered. Maybe it is only another service tunnel. Maybe it is where the last evac route fails. Maybe it is where the false radio traffic originates. Maybe it is just where the airport hides one more practical answer that looks like a mystery until someone survives long enough to open the right door. For now, the immediate danger is over. We are alive. We are underground, fed for the moment, and no one is pounding on the steel. But the airport is still speaking in fragments. The transport plane never takes off. The quarantine corridor fails. The tower goes dark, and somewhere beyond the maps, something heavy moves in the dark, like it still has a schedule to keep. I don't know if we leave at first light, go back for what I abandon, or follow the unlisted branch farther under the field. I only know that the tunnel is real, that it runs deeper than I think, and that every answer I find down here seems to open another locked room. And that's where we'll stop for now.